Welcome back, everybody. I think we're going to get started. Before I introduce our next speaker, Davidson Norris, I thought I would just offer a few other words about the stacking, if you will, or the evolution of the day. As mentioned previously, we've intentionally structured the speakers from one could say, a kind of evolving perspective, starting with the fundamentals or the foundational perspective in light and human anatomy, and then building through design. So now we're in part 2 of the day, and we're going to be focusing more on design relationships. So I have my notes here that I'm going to refer to on Davidson Norris, who is joining me right here. Davidson is an architect, lighting designer, and academic. He is adjunct assistant professor at Parsons in the School of Constructed Environments. He also teaches, or has taught, at Cornell and Columbia. You're still teaching at those places, at Columbia. He is local to New York City, and is the partner at Carpenter Norris Consulting, as previously mentioned, but has been in Jerusalem on a residency the last few weeks. And he's kind enough to return home and join us today for this event. Davidson's work unites highly technical problems with sophisticated poetic solutions that are unique to given site context and highly imaginative, I would add. Unlike many daylighting experts of today that focus on building performance, which he does and obviously is important, his work is heavily rooted in human experience and a very keen psychological understanding of how we see and respond to different dynamics and qualities of the sun. So I hope that you will see evidence in this. I'm sure you will in his work. Please welcome Davidson Norris.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, particularly after a 12-hour flight from Tel Aviv. As Derek has put forward, what I would like to do is to transition from the science basis of light, which, as Derek also mentioned, is extremely important to us in our practice. And we feel that one has to know and be very intimate with the photon in order to be able to use it in any event, whether that applies to some quantitative requirement for light, never mind if it applies for some qualitative experience that you want the users of your light spaces to engage and perceive and perhaps enjoy and remember. So what I am going to show you today is a project that we just got the go-ahead for, and it's at an institution here in New York that I'm not allowed to identify. But it falls into a category that Jamie and I talk about quite frequently that is endemic here in New York, which is the black hole. And we're all familiar with them. And they arise when too small an exterior space is surrounded by buildings that are too dense and too tall. The resulting spaces are ones that are gloomy and dark. And the question then is, what is the solution to the shade that is imparted to that space by these surrounding buildings? And if there is no direct solution, i.e. there's no way to restore enough of the light to make that space once again an easily perceived daylighted space, then are there any other options that at the very minimum can restore a perception of the space as being daylighted? And this is one of our first experiments doing that with fixed reflectors, and I am about to present to you the results, at least of the project so far. You're looking at a courtyard on the Upper East Side. On the south side of the slide, a new building has been erected that is probably 300 feet tall. On the upper right, in the northeast corner, is an existing building, probably about 200 feet tall. To the north is a building that is probably 15 stories or 175 feet tall. Smaller buildings to the west, particularly the southwest, and then to the southeast. The result is that this space, given the fact that it previously had a much lower building to the south and therefore reasonably abundant light, now faces the quandary of having very little light whatsoever. So we were asked to take a look at what could be done in order to restore some of the daylight to the space. These are the architect's renderings of the space on the upper left, and then a construction shot taken some months ago on the lower right. And at the very least, the architects didn't kid themselves and provide a light image for the prospective courtyard with the sun blazing in and with lots of bright characteristics typically identified with daylight. I think his portrayal is actually reasonably accurate. But as you can see, it is a space that has very little or no direct sunshine. Another perspective, this one now looking towards the west, and you can see the presence of a raised platform in the mid-distance there, which is one of the architectural focal points of the space. This is a sun mass diagram taken from the center of the courtyard, and as I think it quite vividly proves, there's very little in the way of direct sunlight that ever strikes the center of this courtyard. You can see, however, that there are two windows. If one starts to think of this as a space, there's a window off to the east, shown up there. Hold on. Whoop. There we go. So there's this eastern window here, a larger, in fact, western window over here, and then there is a skylight overhead. So despite the fact that this space is very enclosed, there is the promise of some resources, light resources that we can count on in order to modify the light regime in the courtyard itself. Nonetheless, this gives you some sense of the quality and character of light within the courtyard. So what we were given was the daylighting fact. Tall buildings that surround this courtyard have, as is often the case with New York City courtyards, reduced occupants' access to daylight intensity, variability, and dynamic. The challenge is, how do we then restore richer and more balanced daylight regime in the courtyard, along with the occupants' perception that it is so? This last one, perception that it is so, is critical. It's not a question of trying to bring back the light that used to be. It is a matter of how we can bring back the minimum necessary light to make people believe that there is not abundant, but maybe adequate daylight in the courtyard itself. So we're trying to do this kind of minimalist restoration project of light in the courtyard. So the first thing that the team did, and this was very much a collaborative enterprise between the architect, the landscape designer, and the lighting designer, to come up with an appropriate solution. I think we quickly settled on Paley Park as having the right kind of quality of space, quality of light that we were looking for. Also the fact that it provided a place for people to sit down and actually experience and hopefully enjoy the courtyard. It had abundant greenery, so there was a landscape feature to it. And then there was this water feature. The only problem was, there were two problems. One is that Paley Park actually has reasonably abundant access to daylight. There are not as many tall buildings surrounding it as in our case. And number two, as you can see on the right-hand slide here, the brightness, the glow of the waterfall itself that gives the space its animation is one that is directly the result of electric light animation. Given both the green program that was absolutely key to this courtyard space on the part of the owner, given the fact that we were looking to use natural rather than electric resources to provide the light, we moved on. We then took a look at the courtyard at the New York Times building. Here, the feeling was that, well, two. One, they had even greater access to daylight than Paley Park did. But beyond that, the space was not an occupiable one. It was not one where people could come, sit down, enjoy the place, space, the light, play with their kids, and so on. It was much more in the style of a Japanese garden, where it was an observational space, a very beautiful one with these lovely birch trees and this ground cover, but not one that applied in terms of its functionality to what we were doing, beyond which, again, it used mostly electric light. The lighting designers proposed the option of actually illuminating and, in fact, restoring much of the light using electric light resources. They were somewhat sheepish about proposing this because they realized that with this kind of proposal, they were never, ever going to be able to duplicate the intensity of sunlight, the color rendering of sunlight, never mind its dynamic. So this was proposed as, this is a really poor idea, but we're putting it on the table anyway. Next, we considered moving now from electric sources to more specifically daylight sources. A project of our own where 3 heliostats, sun tracking mirrors, mounted on a building to the north of Teardrop Park in Battery Park City, are designed to target their light inside of the park, which otherwise receives almost no direct sunshine whatsoever. So at least this was in the category of project that reasonably closely corresponded to what we were proposing. The gentleman basking on the right there, reading the New York Times, is taking advantage of this light. The one issue here, however, and it is common to all heliostats, is that for all of the information and all of the character and quality of natural light that they reflect, they in fact subtract from our perception and experience of that sunlight a key feature, which is its dynamic. It is static sunlight. And so we were somewhat compelled by the idea of perhaps using the heliostats, but we were somewhat reserved about that light having to be carefully targeted, it being pretty much static. In addition to which, these kinds of devices are fairly costly, and putting them on the buildings in places where we could, in fact, gather and then redirect light involves some pretty serious structural gymnastics, and so beyond which the institution took the position that it really didn't want any additional maintenance headaches. So then our focus turned to something that has been brewing in our office for some number of years. Given our experience with the heliostats, and for the very reasons I just cited, we had started to consider moving away from sun tracking mirrors to a matrix of mirrors, an array of mirrors that replicated much of what the heliostats did, but did it with fixed mirrors. And so if what you did is you say, okay, the heliostat changes its tilt and turn, it literally does that every 10 seconds, in order to target the light, then what if you had, over a given day, you had 20 mirrors that subdivided that period, and each one of them was fixed and provided light at a given time on a given day. So you could, with fixed mirrors, enough of them, actually replicate much of what you get with the heliostat, and in theory you could do it at lower cost. So this was an experiment that we did, sort of a thought experiment that we did using the courtyard of the Apthorpe on the Upper West Side. And one of the complaints in the Apthorpe is that for all the cost of the north-facing apartments that look out and into the courtyard, they never ever get any sun. Real estate agents who were selling those apartments were very interested in possible ways of reconnecting those apartments and therefore their value to increased sunlight. So what we proposed was an array of only 9 mirrors that was up on the northwest cornice of the Apthorpe, but designed, as you can see here, each one of them fixed, designed to project a series of beams, starting at the courtyard level up to the top floor into the courtyard. And a series of studies that we did made this look very promising. And what would happen over the course of the day is this mirror would move across on a gentle arc and essentially illuminate with sunlight, once reflected sunlight, all of the apartments at this level. This image on the right side takes all of the days from December 21st to March 21st and records all locations of the reflected sunlight. And as you can see, the coverage is actually extremely good, all the way from down in the courtyard itself to nearly every apartment in the building. So it was enough of an experiment to convince us that this actually could work. And so it became one of the options considered now in terms of our uptown courtyard. Our confidence in this was amplified by a project that has just recently been completed in the new federal courthouse in Salt Lake City, Utah. We were given the charge of it's an art project, and we were given the charge of what to do with light in a very tall, thin atrium. The first thing was to occupy the atrium with targets. In our parlance, these are targets. They are objects to which one directs light in order for that light to be redirected in such a way that you perceive it, you enjoy it, you take note of it, and it changes your perception of the space. They are extruded octagonal, highly reflective aluminum prisms. And in fact, they take their inspiration from ice crystals that form frequently in the atmosphere surrounding Salt Lake City. So if you have your ice crystals, the next question is, well, then how do you get the sunlight on them? And the way you do that is by a series of mirrors at the top of the skylight that reflect the light down. And you can see, or it's hard to see, but each one of the mirrors, in fact, is tilted at a different angle. The result is that each one of them projects light directly down and into the space, such as you're seeing here, so that it intersects with the intervening ice crystals in such a way that they interact regularly. Now, it takes the sun being on axis with this, with the skylight. Salt Lake City is one of those American cities that, both for sacred reasons as well as for Jeffersonian reasons, is oriented absolutely precisely to the north-south grid. So it's actually a meridional axis, and at noontime, the sun aligns almost directly with the skylight. So at that point, some of these mirrors project light down and through and are intercepted by the ice crystals, and at least one of them is designed to go all the way to the ground floor of the building, which is where one enters the lobbies to the elevators, which are on this side. So we got these images back and started to gain confidence in our idea that these fixed kinds of systems could not only deliver light in abundance, but they could do so as long as they hit the targets in a very perceptible way. Over on the left, a slide showing what happens when the light is projected down and into the ice crystal field. The shadow right here is clearly one of the extruded octagons that has intercepted the light, so that light is being bounced around within the space. And over here is an image of the inspiration for this project, which is it's called a sun column or a sun mast, and it has to do with the formation of ice crystals in the sky, and then they orient themselves in such a way that a low-setting sun reflects off of them and guides the beam to your eye. And a bit of an aside here. Is that I think one of the frustrations that certainly we feel as daylighting designers is that the resources that we have to design daylight in a given place, in a given location, in fact, is only quantified. It's never qualified. And the difference is over here, this is a page from a wonderful, an extraordinarily valuable document that we use regularly in our office, which is the NREL Climatological Catalog. And this is the data for Salt Lake City. Down here is the data, and it's very comprehensive, and it's very applicable, and it's very good if you're trying to solve how to get how much, how many foot candles or lux of light that deep into the office space so you can turn off the lights. What it doesn't qualify, so I call this the light of, or the daylight of photon replacement, right? What it doesn't quantify is this, and this stuff happens in Salt Lake City. And I think that there needs to be another page now in the NREL catalog. And it has to identify how often rainbows occur. And it has to identify how often sundogs occur. And it has to identify all of these different atmospheric light events that are not part of removing electric photons from an office space, but are rather engaged in your experience, your second or third perceptible experience of a given atmospheric environment that is absolutely essential to one's understanding of place. All right. Now, back to our project. The first thing that we did was to identify two areas within the courtyard that we felt were appropriate primary targets. One was at the east end. There is a formal stair that connects to the street through here. And arriving at the top, we felt it would be important for one to perceive sprinklings of light within it. And then over here, this raised platform where most of the occupants, either the researchers here or the residents here, would congregate for lunch, would congregate with their families, and so on. Over here, essentially, we were talking about light being reflected off of a series of reflectors and directly into the space. Over here, because there were trees that were anticipated on top of the Ipe platform here, we were anticipating this kind of much more filtered light. Next, we had to verify that the solar access was adequate, and also used it to determine fixed reflector field locations. So what we did was, and this is probably fairly common to you guys, is a series of sunshot studies that indicated, one, that eastern window was actually going to be very important to us early in the morning. As the sun came around, you can see that by about 10 o'clock, it is completely occluded from the interior space. If you look at that yellow patch there, there was plentiful access if we located a fixed reflector field there. And then as the sun continued on its journey around, this was a very interesting feature to us. Well, and it showed that the reflections from an eastern field on the right and a western field on the left, both of those would be synchronous at certain times of the day. So there would be no drop-off, no gaps in the sunlight as it moved across the sky over the course of the day. And then off into the sunset. Okay, then we looked at how it is that we could integrate reflector fields into the existing building skins. This is brand new space, but it's an existing space. So we did not have an opportunity here to actually design the buildings so that they became themselves these reflectors. And had we been able to do so, it might have been quite a different opportunity. On the other hand, this allowed us to explore the kind of retrofit possibility of this kind of a system where it's applied to existing structures. And that's most often the case here in New York City. It's going to be old buildings, existing courtyards. It's not going to be new construction. So the first set of reflectors we looked at was in the eastern quarter, shown here. And here we realized that what we wanted was one set of reflectors mounted on the south face of this building that then bounced light across to another set of reflectors on the north face of this building, and then eventually put it into the courtyard, where a secondary focus in the morning would be the Ipe platform, the landscape platform. The primary would be the courtyard at the top of the stairs. So what we came up with was a pattern of 5 foot by 5 foot, highly reflective, specular reflective stainless steel panels that got affixed to the spandrel. This is the new building to the south, and they are directly facing across this modest gap. Another set of reflectors, a similar field of reflectors that are mounted on these spandrels. So the light hits these, and bounces into the courtyard. We then took a look at the western side, and here you can see the reflectors now mounted on the top corner of the, or the top near the cornice of the south, or the southwest corner of this residential tower. These ones were primarily directed at providing light to the landscape platform. This red dot is important because that was the target for the reflectors in this field. Here I'm showing a slide of the proposed reflectors, and unlike the reflectors on the eastern side, these ones, as you can see, are tilted and turned. Each one of these is designed, and starting up here in January, running down here till June, this going from about 12:30 to about 6:30. Each of these on about a 20-minute cycle is designed to put the light at that target point during that time on the month. This is the matrix where we had column A through J here. We had row 12 through 6 here, and it goes from December to June and then back up again. And each one of these at a given time, so at 2:40 p.m. on June 21st, this reflector right here is targeted to provide light at that target point. Then we evaluated the added reflective light with respect to its occupant perception, location, timing, and distribution. This is a series of Radiance images that we produced. Over here you can see the landscaped platform. Over here, the top of the stairs with the secondary target, the eastern target, at the eastern end of the courtyard. And what this will show is the light that is projected into the courtyard by means of the eastern reflectors during the morning and the western reflectors during the afternoon. So here you can see, and it starts at about 8 o'clock and it'll run through about 6 o'clock. And I'll just run through them one at a time. Bright light coming in through that window, even brighter. But you can also see some of the additional light being reflected from reflectors that are now on this face of the south-facing tower. You can see now these are the remnants of the reflected light from the south-facing tower. These ones are actually being directly reflected onto this, which is actually a hops wall, a landscaped wall. Now you can see the full deployment from the south-facing reflector field. moves across. It's about to intersect with the north-facing field. And you can see these patterns in here are all double reflections. Hits here, bounces into the courtyard. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. Now it swings around to the west reflector field, and remember, the west reflector field is much more targeted. Observe down here, that's the target point. And what you'll see is a series of these move through the target point. Whoops, I'm sorry, I'm going back again. Now you can see over here, remember this is landscape. There are trees in there. And so those patches of sunlight, as they stream down and hit those trees, they will cast shadows, they will penetrate through the canopy of those trees, and they will start to create incidences, light space incidences that are common to us all and perceptible to us all, and that will be part of, hopefully, that shift in perception. Then as it moves on through the afternoon, you can see this migration of this school of light patches towards the east, and moves up and onto the north face of the building, keeps moving, and disappears. So I think this too gave us a good deal of confidence that we could deliver the light, and we could make it very, comparatively speaking, very animated, and it did in fact target these two basic zones that we had designated. The next thing was to, okay, if that's what we had to do in order to harvest the light and redirect it to these places, then we felt that what we had to do is provide secondary targets that actually allowed you to perceive it much more readily. So we had done some work, just completed some work with Michael Van Valkenburg's office on a park down at 26 Federal Plaza, where they had these security camera poles. You can see the security camera here. And we said, okay, well, if those only have to come up to 12 feet, why don't we make them 25 feet high, and let's install some highly reflective ribbons in those so that they reflect more light and sparkle down and into the park. It had some of the same problems, though not as exacerbated as the park uptown. So what we came up with is essentially the same idea of the ribbon, but now the ribbon, instead of it being the 3 ribbons facing south, in fact, there's 12 ribbons that fully encircle these columns that are then embedded in the landscape on the landscaped platform. This gives you some sense of now what happens. These aren't just trees, but these thicker ones, in fact, are these light masts, sky masts we call them, and they too will receive the light, and then given the fact that they're highly reflective, they will suddenly bring brilliance directly to your eye, which will capture your attention. The other part of it that was critical is that we're not just talking about redirected sunlight, but we are talking about skylight as well. And in all of our projects, it's not just about getting the light in an absolutely equal a priority. It's about getting the eye out. And so these reflector masks are not only designed so that if the reflected light from the fields hits a part of the ribbon here, it will reflect it down. But if you were standing here at 40 feet away and you look at the mast, that there is a part of the ribbon that is tilted so that it shoots your eye directly up. So what you are looking at when you're looking at the mast is the sky, right? So all of a sudden that sky that seems so distant, and you're at the bottom of this well, and is now something that is brought into your perception. And sometimes it's all you see is the sky. At other times you're going to see it along with the reflected beam of sunlight from the reflector fields. This shows a quick slide showing how we actually go ahead and we determine what those angles are. They are different depending on how that particular ribbon is oriented in the space. And so here gives you a sense of this would be the primary reflector for the sky. These are primary reflectors, and so it comes down, out. This is coming from a lower angle. These reflectors take the intersecting light from the reflector fields and brings that to your eye. Some tests looking at how it looked from 40 feet away, pretty good. We were getting good sky exposure, 30, 20, and then finally at 10 feet away. So this too showed, I think, that we're reasonably secure in this kind of a system. The next target that we looked at was used the same technology, i.e. The ribbons, but now it focused the ribbons instead of out in the open and integrated in amongst the trees, such as with the sky mass. The sky ribbons, in fact, were integrated in a hops wall that was against the south side of the raised platform. And hops grows very fast. It's very dense. And the idea was that we would insert the ribbons in exactly the same plane as the growth of vegetation, so that during the winter and the hops dies, it would simply be this orderly succession of these sky ribbons. But during the summer, when the hops grows, the hope is, in fact, the conviction is that the leaves will actually integrate with the sky ribbons as well. The result is, we hope, that it will be like looking into this forest that is kind of collapsed. Out on the platform, what we have are these sky masts that are in amongst the trees. And sometimes you see them singly and alone, and other times you see them through the trees. This takes that imagery basically and collapses it into a single plane. I think the one that I'm most curious about is what happens when the hops grows out and into the reflector system. And at that point, I think people will look at it and they'll say, where is that light coming from? Am I seeing all the way through the building? And it's those times where I think we're going to be able to capture not only their eye, but their imagination. And then finally, we looked at another surface that was critical, which is the ground plane. So much activity takes place on the ground plane that we felt that there needed to be some recognition of the sky there as well. So what we developed was a new, these are concrete pavers, basically a good stolid gray. We came up with a much brighter granite paver, and then embedded in the granite paver are these highly reflective stainless steel buttons, so that as you walk over them and you look down in order to make your way across the space, you will see, again, a reflection of the sky. Again, an opportunity to take the eye out as well as an opportunity for light to reflect off of it. So here's a rendering of what we anticipate when the sun is out and fully active. Here is a rendering showing what we expect when there is no sunshine and it's a purely overcast condition. I think this was very heartening. Our sense is that even under an overcast sky, we're going to continue to get a very perceptible, heightened appreciation of this minimal light available. And then at night, the anticipation now is to include LEDs in the masts. I'm contrary. I don't like that idea because I think there's already far too much light in too many places and spaces in New York, and I think a little bit of darkness wouldn't hurt anybody here. Never mind the fact that these are designed to reflect light from the exterior, and there's going to be a lot of light emanating from both sides. So, the question is, given an eastern reflector field fixed and flat, given a western reflector field tilted and turned, given a set of targets that ranges from the sky mass that are buried in the forest at the center of the space, to the sky ribbons that are embedded in the hops wall to the south, and then the reflective sky pavers. Have we made enough of an intervention to change people's perception? To be honest, right now, I don't know. And I don't know whether anybody knows. And it should be completed in about a year, and maybe I'll get invited back to give you my unvarnished opinion. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. Thank you. What a wonderful project and fantastic presentation. I think we can begin to collectively understand the relationship of the first session and the afternoon session. I imagine Raymond has a lot to say about this. I hope so. So we have a few minutes for questions. Are there questions in the audience? We'll start in the back, I think.
Thanks, Davidson. The Siemens reflectors downtown, when I first saw them, I got out my cell phone and I made about 3 phone calls about those. I was just so thrilled to see that and finally meet somebody behind that technology. Is pretty cool. What about surface treatments? Are you worried about such things over time?
Yes. The question is about surface treatments, and it's absolutely critical because most of the coatings that you now get on metals in particular, and if you get good coatings on aluminum, you can get extraordinary reflectivity on the order of 90–95%. It's the same kinds of reflectors that you see inside of luminaires are now available for outside use. What you saw in the masts downtown 26 Fed Plaza, that's a coated aluminum, and we all have our fingers crossed. Hoping that it endures. And that endurance has to do with its endurance as a coating, and it doesn't start to fade. But also, because it's a very thin strip of aluminum, it had to then be applied to another thicker piece of aluminum, and that connection is something that's also vulnerable over time. So the result of our feeling squirrely about that has meant that the reflectors that we're going to install in the Uptown project are all stainless. And number 8, or we're even looking at a number 12 stainless.
Thank you, Davidson. I wanted to ask, and it's related to this issue of the coatings, but whether or not in your experience twice reflected sunlight is as far as you can go? Is there a certain point at which your perception of the dynamic of sunlight is affected by multiple reflections?
Each reflection counts for about 10% of your light. And that goes down over time because these things need to be maintained and cleaned. So one could expect that on an average basis, you're looking at 50% reflection off of an installed system 5 years out, let's call it that. And it doesn't take many 50% reflections to reduce the light down to something where it's very, very difficult to see. So we typically, on an exterior job, we typically don't carry it much beyond 1 or 2 reflections. But these are all 2 max.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for your talk, Davidson. Yeah, I've got a question around the perception of the reflector architecture. You talked about a lot about the perception of the light in the space, plus also some of the vertical elements within the courtyard, but particularly related to the kind of reflectors up on the building. I'd imagine also that's also kind of part of the kind of longer term feedback, but in more kind of general sense, what kind of feedback do you get on projects like this, where obviously they're necessary to achieve the project, but how does that work?
This is the first time I think anyone has ever tried this, so we haven't gotten any feedback at all. The clients, very fussy clients, very sophisticated on the client side, an architectural team on the client side, as well as the architects who proposed us to advise them on this. They seemed quite surprisingly, frankly, to feel that this kind of grid was separate enough from the architecture in order to be distinguishable. And that meant that if it failed, then it was our problem. If it succeeded, it was their victory.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that was an awesome project. It's wonderful to hear you speak about this technology and these ideas. I'm curious about your thoughts on our perception of reflected light, given the contours that we associate with reflection, especially in the city. And we notice these in a lot of spaces. And this framing of reflected light versus something that's more universally, understood as daylight or even soft-edged. Do you have thoughts about
okay, let me ask you this. If you're all New Yorkers, if what you see is a gridded pattern of reflected light in the street, what do you figure? What is it? It's windows. Yeah. And so I think one of my concerns is that with that, not so much with the tilted reflectors, because each one of them, remember, is going to cast the projected light patch is going to be a different form in each case. You're never going to resolve it into the same, it's a similar grid, but it's very different forms that are being reflected. On the eastern field, however, I think you will get the sense that perhaps it's simply windows reflecting light down and into the space. So in fact, one of the things that we did that I haven't discussed is that we're working with a team of Swiss researchers who are expert in caustics. And because when you look at those reflected patterns of windows in the street, it's never this absolutely flat, uniform, consistent pattern of light. It's actually broken up, and one of their qualities, they're very beautiful. And they give depth to the light you don't have otherwise. Now, these guys in Switzerland have figured out a way to actually control caustics. So that you could take a pattern of caustic, such as I showed with that patch moving across the north face of the building, and where it would be a chaotic, one, you could exacerbate it by altering the surface of those reflectors. You could amplify the caustics. But you could also do it so that as that reflected caustic moved across the building, it would go from being a chaotic image to being one that could resolve into Fifi the cat, if you wanted it to, right? We would never go there, but the point is that you can control the caustic projection in such a way that it actually would all of a sudden become a recognizable image or a recognizable pattern. And at that point, we figure we got them, right? Because people can go, whoa, now where, did I really see that? Did I not see that? How did that happen? And there, for me, it would take it outside of the category of the window reflection. Because instead of it being chaos all the time, it is, you start off with chaos and then you order it, and that captures your attention. Right? They didn't buy it. So, maybe 2 years from now. Okay, thank you very much.